right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Yao, and I will be taking through the events of today. Okay, a little bit about Xendit.ph. We are on social media, Instagram at Xendit.ph. But let me tell you first a little bit about the company that we are highlighting today. So Xendit is a financial technology company or a payment gateway company that will simplify the payment process. Now, this fintech provides payment solutions that will simplify the processes for businesses across Southeast Asia. They are originally from Indonesia, but guess what? They're also here in the Philippines. So from SMEs, e-commerce startups to giant corporations, Xendit has solutions for you. They will provide a secure and easy to integrate payment system supported by great customer service. They also have a diverse range of products, some of which we will be talking about today. The Xendit system can accept payments from credit and debit cards, e-wallets, retail outlets, direct debit from bank accounts, as well as online installment plans. And we do love that here in the Philippines. So there are many options for merchants to choose from, among APIs, invoices, payment links, third-party plugins, the whole gamut. Right. So let's get started today. Today we will be hearing from three people. So one of them is going to be from Xendit, and the other two will be use cases. You know, two entrepreneurs that have been trying to make life easier for us, especially now that everyone is shifting to digital and exacerbated, of course, by the COVID-19 pandemic. All right, so how is everyone here today? Is everyone good today? Okay, can I see a raise of hands? All right, I know it's a Friday afternoon and everyone's raring to just go and start the weekend. But before that, we have a lot of surprises for you. This is going to be quick and snappy, so do join us until the end. First off, though, I want to introduce you to our speakers, our very esteemed speakers. We have, of course, from Xendit, the managing director here in the Philippines, Zhang. Hi, Yang. All right. And from BillEase, we have Georg Steiger.
Hi.
And CEO and founder of One Export and alumni of Idea Space, Nava.
Hi.
Mel.
Hi.
Okay. So again, we will have a special webinar exclusive promo from Xendit for everyone who was with us today. So stay tuned because we will be giving the special promo as the event goes on. And for sure, the special promo will help your business thrive further in the digital world. All right. So let's start off with one of our speakers. She is, like I said, Nava, the CEO and founder of One Export. She's, of course, an alumni of Idea Space as well. And to tell us about how Xendit helps her business further along, without further ado, let's welcome Mel. Hi, Mel. Turning it over to you now.
Hi everyone. My name is Mel and I'm the CEO and co-founder of One Export. We are basically a platform helping small and medium businesses export in the Philippines. But before I go to how we export and how we make digital payments much easier, I guess let me define first basically what we do and what exporting really is. So so my presentation. Yes. Hi. Okay. So the topic that I'm assigned to talk about is breaking barriers of exporting through digital innovation. Next. Exporting is basically defined as the process of a local company sending goods and services to a company abroad in the form of a sale or trade. So either you get money from it or you exchange services or goods from it. Basically, whatever that trade is, it's called exporting. And I believe most of us here in this audience are very familiar with it. Next. The Philippines is known for three types of products. Basically, we're known for dried mangoes. I'm sure everybody here loves dried mangoes. We're also known for coconut products, and we're also known for our very robust call center or contact center industry. So next. But let me give you a brief background as to why these three industries are really, really huge in the Philippines. Dried mangoes initially was a product processed in Cebu way back in 1978. So that was when the first dried mangoes actually came to life. The reason why people in Cebu decided to start making dried mangoes is because there was a huge oversupply of mangoes in the market. It was over ripening, and the owners or the harvesters had to find a way to be able to preserve the mangoes. And so what happened was they dried it. Now, as we know, in now fast forward to 50 years later, you know that dried mangoes is a staple pasalubong. It's also a staple product now. If you go to the shelves of Walmart or Target, it's always going to be there because it has really gone through the mainstream market. Next. Now, how did coconut water become popular? Actually, if you look at the history of coconut water, we all knew that coconut water has electrolytes. It helps with, the kidneys and all of that, right? But when Madonna finally picked it up, basically, I think she was on vacation, and then she liked coconut water, and then suddenly became an advocate for it. There was a huge craze, and you saw other celebrities picking up coconut water and coconut oil. So if you look at it, right, like the coconut water craze only happened in the the last decade, like you're talking about 2010 to like 2020. But because of this, you now see coconut water, coconut oil in all of the stores abroad, right? It's almost staple. It's actually that one product that people know come from the Philippines, and is now being exported to the rest of the world. And next, and of course, the last would be, how did the contact center became so robust? Basically, back in the early 2000s, right, when the economy was booming, but there were also financial crisis that was happening in the United States. They had to find a way to lower wages, but to also deliver the kind of service that they were expected to deliver. So contact centers have become a norm where you outsource it in an offshore facility like the Philippines. And the Philippines has a lot of advantages versus others. We are an English-speaking country. Our tone is also very much neutral, which is why people or companies abroad decide to engage services in the Philippines. Next. But what are the lessons of all of these exporting industries, or these major exporting industries? I think the two lessons that we can pick up here is, if you serve the local market, and make sure that people love your product and have a loyal following, there's a big chance that you could go global. And the second lesson here is that, take advantage of the global opportunities, right? If you right now, of course, we have COVID as an opportunity, but it's also a problem, but it's also actually an opportunity. And if you take advantage of the certain problems and opportunities, or even trends, for example, you really could make it to export. Next. Okay, so but why am I here talking about exporting, and why is it important, right? Even with the rise in e-commerce trade, if you look at it, e-commerce people are saying that e-commerce is booming. If you look at our numbers very closely, our Philippine numbers very closely, the Philippines is actually declining in terms of exports. And in the early 90s or in the early 80s, the Philippines was actually the second exporting country in Southeast Asia. However, right now, if you look at it, the Philippines is now just ahead of Cambodia and Laos. Actually, Myanmar has exceeded us in terms of growth, in terms of exporting already, because they have so much economies of scale. No? They're able to produce much lower, and they have more incentives. So if you look at this and you really want to be able to export, I think it's also important for you to look at the numbers, and to look at the reality that the Philippines is not really an exporting country. Next. Why is it not an exporting country? There are several barriers to exporting, one of them being unit economics. our exports are not exactly very competitive versus other countries. One of them being that our electricity rates are much higher. So or people, our labor is actually not as low as people assume them to be. But unit economics is one reason why we're not able to export as much or as fast as our other Southeast Asian neighbors. Next. Second would be product compliance. You're not just talking about compliances of the product, but you're also talking about product specifications, right? So product compliance, people have to comply with highly technical requirements, either in terms of service or products, which differ from country to country, and which unfortunately some of the industries are not yet ready for. Next. Third would be production capacity. Yeah, you may have orders, but you may not have the demand to fulfill it. And this is one reason why the Philippines is not an exporting country. Next. And last would be we don't have established distribution network. So basically, when we talk about distribution, we're talking about supply chain from delivering the products up to selling it, right? We don't have that capacity currently because most Filipino products are just found in Asian stores. We haven't really gone through the mainstream, even if we have a huge diaspora abroad. Next. So they say that one way to break up the barriers of exporting is through e-commerce, and it really is here to stay. So it has changed our shopping behaviors. It has changed how people buy products, and it has changed the importing and exporting landscape. Next. But what is important for us to be able to understand so that we can take advantage of this trend, right? I believe the first thing to understand is to take into account is to understand what your products are. So if you are able to look into, if your products address the basic needs such as food, water, shelter, safety, you're likely to be purchased more. And as we know, during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the essential products that were really prioritized. But of course, if your products are not in that category, the idea here is how can you make them essential? Next. The other thing to take note is how do you understand the market? And so in the if you look at the countries you want to export to, you need to understand what countries are recovering or on the road to recovery, and what countries will likely not recover in a period of time. So these different countries have different needs that you can serve for exporting. Next. And lastly, it's about making the most out of digital. Where are your customers? Where are they currently listening? Of course, it's not because we're not able to travel at least in the next month or next years, or it's not going to be normalized in the next year. You have to understand where your customers are engaging digitally. Know where they are. Are they on web or mobile? Are they on what particular apps? Are they on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram? And communicate with them so that you can start exporting. Next. So in one export, actually, for people that want to start exporting, we do have different sales platforms. So we have a B2B model and a B2C2C model. So basically, we sell to distributors of wholesalers and retailers in Asian stores. But we also are right now taking advantage of the diaspora by giving overseas Filipinos a chance to start their own e-commerce marketplaces through Caravan. So if you are interested to sell or sell your products abroad or export, we can definitely help you. Next. We can also help you process the documents that you need. Next. And convert the products that you have for export. So we make sure that all of these requirements are fulfilled, so that there will be no problems in terms of clearing the goods at port. Next. And of course, with Xendit, we also help process the payments. So basically, we process our payments on Xendit for local transactions digitally, hopefully for export as well. But basically, should you need any payment gateways also, we basically work with Xendit. So yeah, I guess next, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions later during our Q&A.
All right, thank you so much for that, Mel. Like she said, if you do have any questions, please note them down because we will be having a question and answer portion right after our third speaker. So do note them down. We will get to those in a while. Just keep sending in your questions. And again, follow us on Instagram. That's at xendit.ph, XENDPH, or XENDIT.ph. Where did my spelling go? All right, without further ado, I want to introduce our next speaker. He is the CEO of BillEase, which is a consumer finance company building disruptive and innovative products in retail credit around Southeast Asia. He has worked extensively in the Southeast Asian region, spending a couple of years as a consultant with McKinsey in Singapore to talk to us about bringing installment plans online, something we all do love. Let's welcome Georg Steiger, CEO of BillEase. Hi, Georg. Good afternoon.
Hi, Sean. Thanks a lot for the kind introduction. So I'll before I jump into our product and how this works, let me just introduce myself also a little bit. I started First Digital Finance with two former colleagues in 2015. So we're one of the oldest fintech or lending fintech startups in the Philippines. And the idea was actually very simple. We all saw banks from the inside and basically wanted to bring products faster to market. So with all the stuff going on in machine learning, in cloud computing, and so on, we thought that that could solve a lot of problems for customers, but for banks, it's just very hard to move at the speed that's required. And that was the basic idea why we set up this startup. And then in 2017, together with Lazada, we launched BillEase, basically just to offer installment plans for customers who want to buy things online. Can we go to the slides? Yeah, perfect. Okay, next. Yeah, so I think the problem everybody who's selling things online will have experienced, cash on delivery is still king in the Philippines, but also in other emerging markets in Southeast Asia. And the reason is that one, credit card penetration is still extremely low. Less than 10% of Filipinos, for example, have a credit card. And even a lot of, especially younger customers, don't even want to sign up for it anymore because it's not perceived as a healthy product and just too cumbersome to deal with. Second is there's no seamless options for installment plans online. I think in the mall, when you go and buy a TV or a fridge or something, you will always be offered an installment plan, but online that's just not a seamless process because the products that work well offline do not really translate very well into the online world. And then the third reason is, or the impact of this is really hard to shift, especially bigger ticket items to online. So I think in the pandemic, we saw a huge pickup in online deliveries and online shopping, but I think more so on the essentials and on the smaller items, not so much on the big items. And that's really why we launched BillEase to address these issues. Next. Yep. So our solution is BillEase, an app or a buy now, pay later platform where customers can apply and in most cases instantly get a credit line with us. We give limits of up to 10,000 pesos upfront, but that can then be mixed with down payments to also enable bigger purchases. So we can cover easily purchases up to 20, 30, even 50,000 pesos. So we have a lot of customers buying phones, gadgets, and so on. And we can approve that mostly automatically. Okay. We also have invested quite a bit over the last few years in training and building our credit models. And I think that's really what is very important. And you don't really see it on the front end, but that's what really powers a good buy now, pay later platform, because that allows you to keep rates reasonable. So I think if you compare our rates to, say, other cash lending and payday lending types apps that are out there, we try to keep rates low so that we can that we can finance purchases at affordable rates for the customers. We also support zero APR deals. So for the customer, there's no interest to pay. And the merchant basically covers with a small fee the interest part of that deal. The best part is once a customer is onboarded and they have made their payments, this credit line stays with them, so they can avail again. So it's also a very good tool to manage customer loyalty and get customers to come back for the second purchase. Okay, next. We also offer very flexible payment plans because we know that different merchants have very different needs, and different customers or different transactions have different needs. For smaller transactions, so say if you're buying flowers or you're buying groceries, we have something called Pay Later. That's an interest-free payment option. So if the customer just wants to basically delay payment until the next payday and pay in full on the next payday, then there's no interest for that. We do that basically just for exactly the amount that they want to purchase. Then the classical pay in installments, so customer can split their purchases into 3 to 6 equal installments. Once they have established their credit with us, we give up to 12 months, and at a pretty low rate of around 3% per month, or 0% promo for products that have enabled that. And then for larger items, so say a TV, a fridge, gadgets, mobile phones, we have a down payment option. So customer can settle a part of the purchase in cash up front. And what we do then with some merchants, we have an arrangement where we boost the credit limit. So say you want to buy something that's a bit more expensive, you don't have to cover everything as a down payment. We will boost temporarily the credit limit and kind of meet you halfway. Okay. Next. So we have, as I mentioned, we've launched this initially with Lazada. We have opened up the platform last year, and we have already onboarded a pretty good array of merchants. We have also integrated with Xendit. So I think starting next month, if you are integrating with Xendit as a payment platform, you can also open up BillEase as a channel through Xendit. So it will be very easy and very seamless for any merchant to integrate with us if they're already integrated with Xendit. We've also integrated with Xendit the other way around. So we are using Xendit as a payment channel for our customers to pay their installments through direct debit. So they can just basically link their online banking account and then make the payments. So that's it already. That's BillEase for you. Yeah, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for that, Georg. Again, I'm going to say it. If you have any questions or clarifications that you want from Georg, please note them down and hold on to those questions because we will be having a Q&A after our next speaker. So I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker because she is the managing director of Xendit Philippines, who grew up obsessed with programming. She earned her bachelor's degree from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, majoring in computer science. Now, before she jumped into Xendit, she was co-founder and chief of strategy of a cryptocurrency trading platform here in the Philippines, where she discovered opportunities in the Philippine financial infrastructure. And now, I guess, we see that all coming to fruition. It is my pleasure to introduce to everyone Yang Zhang. Good afternoon, Yang. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. It's great to be here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us as we discuss how any business, small or large, SME or enterprise, can definitely utilize payments infrastructure to thrive in this new digital world. Super excited to kind of talk more about Xendit's products, but also about how, in general, businesses can digitize in a short period of time in order to take advantage of this sort of post-pandemic ecosystem. So a little bit about myself. I think Sean mentioned this earlier. I had already been in the Philippines for about 2 years when I first met the founder of Xendit. I think that initially, as soon as we started talking about the possibility of Xendit expanding to the Philippines, I knew that the market potential was just so huge. I'd fallen in love with really how much potential there was here, how friendly the regulators were here, but also because I had witnessed some of the problems in the fintech sector firsthand, I knew how difficult it was to really integrate with a lot of payment solutions. And so for me, who has always been a bit of a tinkerer, obsessed with programming, as Sean said, it just meant that there were more disruptive, more interesting solutions that could be built here than there could be anywhere else in the region. So I think to start, if we could cue the slides, a little bit about Xendit. I think it's a name that's just starting to become known here in the Philippines. Maybe the easiest way is to just get down to the numbers. So as you can see, we care really, really deeply about scale when we build digital infrastructure for Southeast Asia. So to us, scale means more than just the ability to help us and ourselves grow exponentially. It actually just means the ability to help other startups, our merchants who trust us to handle their payments. We really just want to help them grow exponentially. So on the back really of our merchant success, we were able to achieve an annual run rate of about 7.5 billion last year. So definitely in US dollars, by the way. So definitely a lot of scale in that regard. But what's more important is that's an average of 10% month-on-month growth for the last 36 months, even during the global pandemic. I think that really speaks to the ability for us to support our merchants through tough times and good, and also to be able to have processed so many transactions. I think the 65 million transactions per year translate to over 5 million per month. I think that it's exciting to see the Philippines starting to comprise a growing percentage of that number as well. Next slide. Something that we've really been proud to contribute to the Southeast Asian startup ecosystem is our history and being able to attract interest from investors that don't normally look at this area. I think that, of course, the first was Y Combinator, who came in as early as our seed round. We were only their 5th Southeast Asian investment. And as of this year, we were actually number 63 in the top YC companies of all time. So we joined greats like Dropbox and Stripe and Airbnb, these household names, in being able to try to attract interest to this region as well. Other investors from the Valley that kind of considered us their first investment in Southeast Asia were Excel and Kleiner Perkins, also backing some really big names. What this really means to us and what we're the most excited for is that we're able to not only showcase our own success to these, but also the success of our merchants to all the investors and kind of give more prominence to the markets that we serve. Next slide. In just 2019, the Philippines actually joined our 4 other offices in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and the US as the latest office for all of our regional products. We're really excited that we were able to attract top talent from really around the world. Our global team is clearly very accomplished. It's 300 strong now, but there's a rapidly growing team of 30 in the Philippines that we hope to continue to expand into the far future. After all, if you look at the next slide, this is the same team that has helped us launch all of these value clients throughout the region. So some of these names are from the Philippines, some of these names are obviously from the Indonesia as well. But I think these are really some of the largest names when it comes to tech, travel, lending, retail, really all across the verticals. We really want to find a way to support our customers regardless of the industries that they're in. Next slide. One question I get a lot is, what is the secret to Xendit's success? What is it that you're really trying to do, and why did you come to the Philippines? So if you look at the formula, when we decided to go into the Philippines, there were things from Indonesia that we really wanted to replicate and things that we wanted to do for the first time. What we wanted to replicate were the general frameworks of this formula, which is that we want to build deep into our markets. What we care about is building infrastructure. We see ourselves as being not just a payment gateway, but also a company that actually directly builds infrastructure. We work closely with banks, with other financial institutions to make sure that we can help them build products that the markets themselves have never seen. And that's sort of the second pillar, right? Being able to introduce new experiences, some of which I'll discuss here today, and to work directly with the most prominent names in each individual country to make that reality. And I think finally, by doing both of the first two, we find that we are able to actually make digital transformation a reality across the market, again, for merchants both small and large. And so I think for me, a big question I get at the end of this is, why were you so sure that the Philippines would be the market in which you could achieve this again? And when we thought about that decision, it really came down to the readiness of both the market itself and the regulators to accept a business like ours. When we looked across, I think the BSP actually was one of the most progressive and forward-thinking of the regulators in this region. They were a formidable partner for tech advancement because they themselves actually came out and said, we want to see more payments digitized over the next few years. And so I think that we decided to try to replicate this formula in the Philippines because we were sure that a lot of startups and also traditional businesses could benefit from our products because they, at this time, were extremely open and ready for that next stage of innovation. Next slide. So before I address our products, there are still a lot of challenges, of course. Whenever we look in approaching this market, we know that we are dealing with a market in which many still prefer to pay in cash. There are a lot of security concerns around digital payments, and awareness of e-payment platforms remains low. However, we feel like we can tackle a lot of these problems through remedying poor user experiences. While previously a lot of these user experiences for digital apps have overwhelmed customers, we want to make sure that we can build experiences that are intuitive and easy enough that more Filipinos can transition to digital payments painlessly. So ultimately, as you can see in the next slide, what Xendit has spent the last year building is really just the simplest and most trusted payment gateway. What we really wanted to do was come up with a full product suite, a comprehensive set of solutions that supports both startups and just the general digital ecosystem at large. So I wanted to focus on each one of these bands a little bit more specifically. Obviously, our core products just cover the acceptance and disbursement of payments. So if you look at the blue line of core payments, we have two products, Zen Payments and Zen Disperse, one covering the acceptance of payments, the other covering the sending of payments. For both Zen Payments and Zen Disperse, we really are just helping Filipino merchants manage their cash flows more easily. So especially for the payment side, we've partnered with some of the country's top banks, retail outlets, e-wallets, and now lenders to offer maximum convenience. We wanted to make sure that, in 2020, we focused a lot on that digital payment space. And then in the first half of 2021, we really focused on introducing more banks and even some retail outlets as the country begins to emerge from the pandemic. Finally, I think one of our focuses has also been to expand our acceptance of credit cards. So both international, local debit cards, credit cards, but also to add more schemes. So Visa, MasterCard today, Amex and JCB in the next few months. On the disbursement side, it's just real-time disbursements to all of the country's top banks and major e-wallets. I think we're really excited also, of course, in the first half of 2021 to start adding cash disbursements here as well. If we were to move from that core payments, just one up to the value-added services or the value-added applications, these are really ways that we feel like we can help merchants that don't have huge tech teams use our products really easily. So value-added applications like Zen Invoice, for example, can help you create, customize, and manage invoices. So businesses can use Zen Invoice as a really easy, really convenient way to integrate with our products right away without any custom kind of interface or customization on their own platform at all, to build their customers and accept their preferred payment methods immediately. On the flip side, Zen Payouts does something very similar. You can say to send a payment link to a supplier or a customer and just send back refunds, send back any payment you want to give them through that link. I think one of the more interesting product lines is financial services. So the ones covered here are Zen Capital and Zen Credit Cards. So I think we have a card issuing line as well as a working capital lending product for our merchants only. So while, for example, the likes of BillEase, TendoPay, Kashalo are pay later customers or partners actually lend directly to consumers, we only lend to the merchants that we work with directly. Starting this month, as mentioned earlier, we are actually beginning to offer pay later. So this gives customers a digital line of credit directly in the checkout experience. Again, Xendit itself is never the lender in that experience. We're just excited to be partnered with the top lenders in the market. So it's Kashalo, TendoPay, BillEase, who's kind enough to be here with us today. In general, what we want to make sure is that we can improve the accessibility of credit and end predatory lending for good. Overall, if you were to look at that final bar of payment security, we of course care so much about making sure that fraud is minimized on our platform, that we are able to help merchants painlessly resolve fraud concerns. And I can delve a little bit more into that later. Next slide. Overall, we look at three main pain points as we think about what we want to build, what we've built so far, and what we want to build in the future. The first is that we want to make sure that payments stop involving so many humans. A lot of our products focus on taking payments experiences that currently involve a lot of individual people, a lot of makers and approvers, and we want to make sure that it's as automated as possible so that payments can just work. You don't have to worry about having to do the reconciliation yourself or tracking settlement yourself. We just make sure that that entire process is automated as possible. Something else that's really important, especially in the Philippines market, is that we collate a lot of different individual partnerships into one single integration to rule them all. So instead of having to go talk to each one of the e-wallets separately, each one of these retail outlets separately, we want to make sure that if you integrate with Xendit, you have access to all of these all at once. So for example, while sometimes it might take a year to get through all of these different payment channels, we can make sure that you don't have to do any of the negotiations yourself. We just give you our rates and you're able to go live as quickly as your tech team can. And then finally, I think what we really try to spend a lot of time on is ensuring great service to our customers. So I think, we want to make sure that everyone is supported through their integration process. Feel free to ask, both of our other guests here what their integration experience with Xendit has been. But we do spend a lot of time trying to dedicate tech, product, customer success support in order to make sure that all of our customers can go live as quickly as they can. Next slide. Over the last few months, we do, as you can see through the live channels, we think we've done pretty well in pursuit of the goals that we just mentioned, but there's still a lot to be done. So if you look through our preview for Q1 and Q2 of this year, you can see a little bit of what I talked about, the focus on really adding retail outlets to the equation, kind of completing that suite for us, and also in terms of launching a full suite of e-wallet solutions, especially as they get more prominence in this market. Next slide. I wanted to take the time and just zoom in on two particular products, the first of which is Zen Direct or Direct Debit. This is a product that has been actually growing on average about 50% month on month since launch across all of our partners. So I think that for anyone who is currently using it, they are finding that it's pretty easy for their end customers to use. Something that really sets us apart is that it's a one-time integration for multiple banks in the Philippines. We have BPI Union Bank live today. We're adding BDO, Metro Bank, and RCBC in short order in the next few months. And it's something that will allow you to accept payments from those banks without ever leaving your own app or website. So on the next slide, you can see that the experience is actually pretty seamless. So on the left is what happens the first time you pay via a bank account. So let's say you're logging into your BPI account for the first time. You basically use your web banking password, log in, and get this token. We are then able to save that login information on behalf of the merchant securely, so we never see the username or password, and then allow that merchant to actually continue to debit from that account every time the user requests it. So for example, the use cases are really immediate, right? So anytime, let's say for example, for our guest today, if you're paying back a BillEase loan, month after month, you can use the same BPI account to pay back that loan for recurring payments. If you are using One Export and you need to pay your fees on a monthly basis, you don't have to put in a new payment method every time. You can store your BPI account information one time and continue to debit from it, even if it's different amounts every time. On the next slide, you can see that the same seamless experience actually also applies for e-wallets. So for example, Paymaya, Gcash, GrabPay, Coins.ph, all of these are either live now or available really shortly. We have the exact same experience. So not only do we want merchants to be able to accept one-time payments from these wallets, we also want merchants to save their customer account information for e-wallets securely so we can support recurring payments there as well. On the next slide, of course, you may have already spotted Xendit's tech hard at work. If you happen to use GrabPay for your transportation, logistics, or food delivery, we are the technology that powers direct debit for them. So if you've topped up your GrabPay account at any point in time, these are screens taken directly from the GrabPay app. It's a pretty easy experience, exactly as we had shown in our example slides. On the next slide, you'll see what makes Xendit's direct debit product a bit different from the others that exist in the market. So I think there have been a lot of similar bank transfer products in the past. The concept of paying via this web banking is not new, but the older experience usually involves redirecting users away from the merchant's website and directing them onto web banking. So this process tended to be a bit confusing for people. Sometimes these users would actually end up not completing the checkout process because it took too long, or they got lost along the way. With Xendit Direct Debit, I think the main difference is that you stay within the app the entire time. We're able to save this account information instead of forcing customers to log in every single time themselves in order to promote recurring payments, and we make sure that the process is as seamless as possible. So today, on the next slide, we're really excited to be able to unveil the roadmap for Direct Debit for the remainder of the year. So while credit cards only have 3% penetration in this market, obviously now with both bank accounts and e-wallets, you can reach over 50% of the population via the Direct Debit product altogether. So I think it really gives our merchants the ability to allow customers to pay really easily via banks and e-wallets, and the rates tend to be up to 80% lower than traditional credit cards. Next slide. The next product and the last product I wanted to delve a little bit more deeply into is our new Pay Later product. So I think Georg from BillEase covered this a little bit earlier. It allows merchants to have their customers pay using some of the more popular lending apps in this market. So we're piloting with BillEase, super excited about that, later this month, and expanding over the rest of the year to some other partners. The use cases for this Pay Later product are really endless. So if you look at the next slide, wherever traditional payment methods can be used, anytime you'd usually do any recurring product, instead of accepting cash, that usually people would have to use a predatory cash loan for, merchants can just allow customers to pay via digital loans. So some common use cases, of course, are any kind of installments, even day-to-day purchases, utilities and subscription payments, all these like really common use cases that usually anyone who needs credit would struggle to pay for on a regular basis. On the next slide, you can also see that the benefits of customer acquisition are super significant. So not only do customers feel really empowered to check out because now they have even more alternative payment solutions, but it actually allows merchants to appeal to an entirely new set of customers, right? So I think earlier we discussed how customers, a lot of new younger folks don't want to apply for credit cards. There are an entirely new set of customers who don't qualify or just don't think that credit cards are a good idea. And so many of these customers would benefit from promotions like, for example, BillEase's introductory 0% interest in order to kind of take a responsible step towards using credit and building up their own personal credit lines. I think even better is that overall, Pay Later actually reduces the cost of funds for new merchants. While a lot of people always wonder, like, is this going to be a really expensive channel for me to add? This channel is actually far cheaper than most other payment methods. So on the next slide, this actually covers a little bit about the cash flow. So while, for example, BillEase will offer all these really flexible payment terms to their customers, that actually doesn't affect the merchant in terms of settlement at all. This is probably the most common question I get from merchants who are wondering about whether they should use Pay Later. So they're like, do I have to take on the credit risk myself? Does Xendit take on this credit risk? And actually there's no settlement risk. So the moment that someone decides to check out with BillEase, Xendit is actually able to settle that full amount onto the dashboard. You'll see that amount has been confirmed. There are no chargebacks at that point. From that point forward, BillEase takes on that entire credit risk. The relationship is actually between the end customer and BillEase. The merchant can just move forward and continue to build their own businesses without having to worry any further about that credit risk. Next slide. Of course, we wouldn't be Xendit if we didn't also try to make this experience as seamless as possible. So as you can see, the BillEase experience tries to mirror our Direct Debit experience as much as possible. It's a really simple process. You sign into your BillEase account, you pick the length of payment term. Again, you're usually even able to get approved on the spot, especially if you've done the KYC on the BillEase app. And then you are able to check out pretty seamlessly right in that checkout experience. So I think that we are really excited to introduce this to the market. I think that it becomes a pivotal piece of really our mission to make sure that we can end predatory lending in this market. And I think our vision is clear. So I think our mission is really to drive growth for the Philippines economy. We want to make sure that financial services are more accessible across the nation. And our goal is to get there, our goal is to make sure that digital payments are as simple as possible. We want them to be safe, we want them to be easy, and we want to make sure that we help other businesses kickstart that digitalization journey. We're really excited to work with everyone here. We want to be able to kind of help you design your digital transformation journey and also figure out which one of these alternative payment methods works the best for you. So while our dreams for the Philippines market are really endless, we have so many other innovative products in the pipeline, similar to Direct Debit and Pay Later. Right now, we're focused on optimizing what we have and making sure that we are building in response to customer needs. So thank you guys so much for listening. Really excited to take this forward and kind of share a surprise, as I think Sean's about to introduce.
Yes, that's right, Yang. You know, I have been sounding a little bit like a broken record announcing the surprise that Xendit has for everyone in attendance today. So let's not let them wait any longer, shall we? It is a Friday. It is almost the weekend, Yang. So I'm going to hand it over back to you so you can go ahead and make that announcement.
Sure. Excited to finally unveil this. In return for taking the time to spend, listening to us for Friday evening, I want to offer all of the guests at one of our products. So any webinar attendee who signs up today will receive a month's worth of free direct debit transactions. So you can see the Xendit experience yourself, no strings attached, just try it out and see what you think.
All right, a free 1 month subscription to your services. Am I right in using the word subscription still? So to all business owners who are interested in trying out Xendit services, you can sign up a little bit after the webinar. I think Yang's gonna give you until the entire weekend, so you can sign up. Just simply go to dashboard.xendit.co. So again, dashboard.xendit.co, and you will get 1 month free direct debit transactions. So you can try out one of their services. Of course, that's only one of the many options that you can avail of with Xendit. And as promised, I'm going to transition right now to the Q&A section, which I hope people will participate in. I am expecting a lot of questions. I do have a couple myself. So I'm going to go ahead and ask this. Mel, I think this one goes out to you. How can Xendit help prop up the Philippine export sector? You're absolutely right in saying that exports have been struggling throughout the years. I've noticed the numbers myself, and I am quite sad about our low export numbers. So how exactly does Xendit help one export? Can you give us a use case or take us through a concrete example? You also touched on managing cash flows in your presentation earlier. Care to expound, Mel?
Well, sure. Yeah. Basically, for small and medium businesses that want to process their local documents, we use Xendit to do the local transactions because the rates are actually fairly competitive versus the payment channels here that are being offered. So we use Xendit for that. However, of course, there are other there are exciting things that Yang has definitely brought up, which are payment terms, right? Or delayed payments, as well as BillEase. So delayed payments and offering credit terms to potential buyers will really increase exports. I think Philippines is currently a cash first system where they want the cash immediately. And so definitely offering credit terms to buyers will improve Philippine exports.
Thanks for that, Mel. Yang, do you want to add to what Mel has said so far?
Sure. I think in terms of how we are excited to support companies like One Export, I think that we also, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, also have a remittances business here. So we do handle cross-border payments as well. I think that it's really part and parcel of trying to be supportive of the Philippines ecosystem at large. If you're building financial infrastructure here in the Philippines, you definitely have to address remittances. So yeah, super excited.
Yeah, definitely. Remittances, definitely a big part of Filipino life, also a huge part of exports when it comes to the Philippines. And we're talking about export numbers. We do export a lot of services. Now, Georg, a question for you. How do you ensure that there are no defaults when it comes to installment payments? Can you talk us through your vetting or approval process, and where along this process does Sendit PH come in?
Yeah. Okay. So that's a great question. So Xendit right now helps us on the payments, and as mentioned before, we will also be available as a payment channel for any merchant on Xendit. The credit approval is really on our side, and the credit risk is really on our side, and that's our value add, right? That's kind of the secret sauce. We do use credit bureau, so there is a bit of credit bureau data available. But then for the customers who don't have a record, we have alternative factors that we're looking at, such as behavior, such as previous loans with us. Of course, if customer has already a record with us, and then also telco scores and so on. So we have quite a few data providers we're working with, and that helps us to, as much as possible, automate the credit decision making. And that is the important part, because if you have to go too much into a manual review process, that one slows it down, and two just makes it also quite expensive to execute.
All right, thanks for that, Georg. Now, we have a question coming in from the audience. This one is from Canby. He's asking where, unlike the United States, where consumer credit scores are prevalent, the Philippines does not employ any such robust credit scoring mechanism. I do think the CIC is working on that, though. What now is BillEase's screening mechanism to assess credit quality of a potential borrower and subsequently determine loanable amounts and interest rates?
Yeah, so it's a bit similar to the previous question, right? But we look at many different factors. We use machine learning technology to basically assess a customer in a holistic way. So if there's a credit bureau record, that goes into a decision. If there's none, we look at most behavioral factors.
All right, thanks for that, Georg. At least we've covered the vetting process with regards to installment and loan approvals and determining interest rates. Now we have a question from Victor Saldo from Carrot World. He is asking, when is installment and pay later payment options going to be launched? Yang, I think this is for you.
Sure. So Pay Later is actually launching later this month. I think we're just finishing the last rounds of testing, so super excited. Thank you, Georg, for the BillEase's support on that. In terms of installments, we are actually working with BDO right now to launch BDO installments in early Q2. So very excited for both of these.
All right, super exciting. So later this month, Victor, you're the one who asked that question. Now we have a question from Business World, and this one goes out to you again. Yang, can you share about the cash disbursement feature that you are looking to introduce this year? How exactly can merchants tap this?
Yeah, I think that like all of our other products, all the activations always go through our dashboard. So I think if you sign up on the dashboard, you'll be able to see the latest products available. We would be rolling this out in early Q2 as well. It's the ability for any merchant to disperse into a payment code. So essentially it can happen one of two ways. The first is that there is a Zen payouts product that's essentially the equivalent of a payment link, but a payout link. So anyone who receives it can say, hey, you know what, instead of opting to receive these funds into my bank account, I want to receive these funds into a Cebuana. So I want to go pick these up at a Cebuana. But then issue you a payment code that you can use at the Cebuana branch in order to get your cash payout. The other way is, of course, via API. The customers, for example, lenders who want to integrate to these APIs would be able to give their customers the ability to pick up their loans, for example, in cash at these cash outlets. So basically via either the value-added applications we had mentioned earlier, Zen Payouts, or via direct API integrations.
All right, I hope that answers your question. Another question now from Business World, from Wendy Noble. Her question is, for Xendit, can you share about the cash disbursement feature that you are looking to introduce? Oh, sorry, I already asked that. Here, there is another question. This one goes out to Mel. What business processes in your company have undergone major digital shifts, and how did this change management impact your company and people?
Well, I think one of the major exporting activity would be entering trade shows. Like so, going to trade shows, closing deals with buyers face to face, because buyers like to transact and build trust and credibility face to face, right, with their suppliers. Obviously, because of the pandemic, that's not possible right now because everyone cannot travel, and so, we did shift our current operations. We did move everything online in terms of ramping up our SEO, ramping up our buyer base. So we started to become more creative. That's why we are currently engaging overseas Filipinos that want to start businesses abroad to actually, import from the Philippines. So we did a lot of changes in terms of strategy, but also how we look at things from before, right? So a lot of it was really, really going digital, but also trying to get management to think differently. It was hard at first, I'll be honest, but our 2020 year was we've been able to achieve double of our pre-pandemic um, uh, our performance, and we're also now increasing our sales. I think we're also basically all of the efforts because of the pandemic have really paid off. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that, Mel. Okay, questions are coming in quick and fast. This one is from Jolson of ErgoFix. I think this one goes out to you, Yang Yang. Do merchants need to undergo some application process with the digital loan providers to offer pay later for their customers?
Actually, as part of Xendit's KYB process, we are the ones, once you express interest in adding these pay later channels, we are the ones who broker that on behalf of our merchants. So there's no need to actually go to each one of the lenders. We would be the ones to help submit the KYB documents and make sure that you can activate BillEase, for example, as one of your channels.
All right, thanks for that, Yang Yang. All right. Okay, this one, another question from Can Be again. What is the most significant difference between the Indonesian payment infrastructure relative to that of here in the Philippines?
Oh, it's so interesting. So I had never worked in the Indonesian market prior to joining Xendit, and I was really surprised actually at both the differences and the similarities. So I think in terms of similarities, I would actually say that the Philippines is the state at which the Philippines is today is extremely similar to where Indonesia was 4 years ago, which makes me really excited for the hyper growth that's ahead for the Philippines. I think 4 years ago, a lot of Indonesian companies were really just on the cusp of figuring out, how to utilize digital payments and how to utilize digital payments to really help themselves scale. So I think that like boom and like Gojek and Grab in Indonesia really just happened in that short span of time. I think the most significant difference is actually that in Indonesia, there are a lot more state-owned banks, which necessarily kind of tie the regime and the government to the development of fintech a little bit more closely than it is here. I think largely the banking industry is dominated by private sector players in the Philippines, which is it's a double-edged sword, right? I think that in a lot of ways, it means that private sector priorities take precedence, but also it means that innovation cycles can sometimes be a little bit faster because regulators are willing to take this sort of open sandbox approach when we try to launch new products like Pay Later, like Direct Debit. So I think definitely that's the biggest difference. I was really surprised because I assumed the two would be a lot more similar, both archipelago nations, both kind of spread out in terms of infrastructure. But I think I'm just the most excited to see the Philippines have that boom of homegrown unicorns and hypergrowth that Indonesia has seen over the last few years.
Definitely a lot more deregulated over here, huh? Now, another question. I think this is general, so any of you guys can answer this. When we talk about context of digital payments here in the Philippines, do you guys think that there will be another pivot or shift in consumer behavior, at least in terms of how they transact post-pandemic? Or will this accelerated or quote unquote forced shift be sustained since we're already here?
I think the digital payments and basically the shift to digital will stay. I don't think people who have said that they will never go online are now online because there is no choice, and so it should just get better from here on. It's a nice way because now it levels off the playing field for everybody, and now everybody has to perform. But also, I feel like for us to be able to just shift digitally, we have to really be able to offer relevant solutions and answer to people's problems for us to really stay and make it in the industry.
Thanks for that, Mel. Georg, maybe you want to add a little bit something to that?
Sure. I completely agree. I think the shift for sure is here to stay. This was really just an acceleration of a trend that was naturally already underway. Consumers always are very conservative with their money. So changing any consumer behavior that touches money is always very hard and a long drawn process. And now that that change has happened, I don't think it will switch back anytime soon.
All right, thanks, Georg. Yang, you did briefly touch on data privacy and security issues. Of course, that is one of the biggest barriers here. Even when people want to make the shift to digital, that will usually be something that you hear. And surprisingly, not just from senior citizens, even young people are concerned about this. What does Xendit, or how does Xendit keep user data secure? Are you privy to discuss, maybe just in broad strokes?
Sure. I think that, by and large, we get these concerns all the time. Almost every merchant that we're integrating with asks us these questions. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about the best ways that we can kind of install best practices in-house. So I think in terms of cybersecurity, we actually have a dedicated team of white hat hackers that do nothing but try to hack our systems to make sure that no one else can. So I think that really is a continuous process of trying to optimize the security of our systems, make sure that we're putting in the barriers and the walls in place to make ourselves really difficult to hack. However, we do also work on a merchant-facing fraud detection system. So I think this is powered by really advanced data analytics, it's powered by some machine learning algorithms to make sure that we can continue to analyze customer behavior so that we can allow all transactions that might look a little suspicious but are actually valid, but also preemptively block suspicious transactions that we are sure are fraud. So it's highly customizable. Merchants can actually say, this is a type of unwanted consumer behavior I really want to prevent against, whether it's, high velocity of charges, whether it's, strange IP addresses, whether it's a particular country they want to block altogether. And what's really exciting is that we actually offer this fraud detection system free of charge to all of our merchants across our payment channels because we really care so much that they're not hit with these fraud concerns and chargebacks.
All right, one more question again from Jolson of ErgoFix. Is the direct debit promotion applicable for existing Xendit users? They recently signed up for Xendit and they are waiting for account activation. That's for you, Yang.
Yep. So I'm always really happy to meet a new client. I will try to make sure that you get activated as soon as possible. I think because you spent our Friday afternoon with us or evening with us, I'm super happy to honor the promotion for you. Just mention this when you sign up to the account rep that reaches out. So yeah, definitely.
All right, we have evidence of that. So everybody heard that. Did you hear that? Joel said. Okay, from Ken B again, does Xendit have any plans of going B2C in the Philippines?
So I think that for us, we don't see ourselves necessarily as, being strong in that B2C space. We are B2B2C. We love supporting our merchants, and most of our merchants are, of course, B2C. So I think that, for us, if the opportunity exists, I think that we never say no, but at this time, we really see so many opportunities in just that B2B space. And I think that until we're done kind of building out the optimal sort of payment platform to make sure that we have all the channels and both online and offline for our merchants access, it's something that is really not on our radar at this time.
Right, I have one final question. I actually got this idea to ask this because of what you said, Yang, but I think this goes out to even Georg and even to you, Mel. How to end predatory lending in the Philippines. This is, of course, killing a lot of profits, a lot of income for, the average Filipino. I'm sure in each and every one of your own ways that you can help each other to kind of end this practice. Maybe when you join forces or you vote in, we can get a step closer to ending this. Does anyone want to answer this question first?
I can take a correct. This is kind of close to heart. Okay, I think that the best way to end this is to make sure that better options are available, because any crackdown will always just basically push this stuff into darker corners of the market. And if it's not online, then it will be offline, right? I mean, 5.6 is not something that was invented with with the internet here, right? And I think what does it take to make that happen, right? So one is, of course, there's a lot of new players now out in the market. We are one of them, trying to basically do better underwriting, better analytics, and so on. I think what can be a game changer is the national ID, when that's being rolled out, to have a proper ID system where it's an easy to really tie down a customer and make sure that you understand who's your counterparty, and just better data availability. So the more data sources, the more also credit records are in the credit, the better it will be for everyone in the end.
Anyone want to add to that?
Well, for One Export, what we actually do crowdfunding for our orders. So we crowdfund our export orders, but that's because our suppliers and buyers go through a strict vetting process, as BillEase and Xendit, right? So that's sort of how we're able to reduce the interests that most predatory lenders offer, right? In terms of funding an order. And we feel that we are significantly, at least we only charge maybe 1/3 of what the predatory lenders would offer. But this really helps in terms of sales. We are doing our part, although of course it's an ecosystem play where it's not just one or two players that can solve the problem. It's really the help of a lot of stakeholders here, like buyers paying upfront or not defaulting on their payments, and suppliers really being able to deliver, right? So I feel like it's a long-term play here, but I feel like all tech startups are doing what they can to make sure to address this really.
All right, that sounds great. And really, you're right. It does take a village or maybe even a whole country, plus a bunch of whole regulators. And of course, entrepreneurs like yourself to offer products. Yang, do you want to add to that?
I think that in terms of ending predatory lending, we feel like it always comes down to data. So I think it comes down to the ability to not only store data in a responsible way, but also allowing users to have access to their own data. So I think something that really sets apart, Western markets from a lot of Southeast Asian markets is the credit bureaus. Is this sort of transparent source where your credit history is tied to some sort of national ID or some sort of very recognized identity system. By being able to build up a credit history, it really empowers you to actually access and continue to grow your access to credit. Without that here in the Philippines, I think it will be hard to end predatory lending. But the reason that we've partnered with the likes of BillEase is really because we believe in their mission, and we believe in the ability for responsible lending platforms to make huge strides towards that goal.
I love it how everyone in this room is very supportive of having the national ID system and also giving people a perspective, a more positive perspective to the national ID system, which is of course getting different, opinions slammed at it from all ends. Okay, any more questions? I'm gonna count down to 5. If there are no more questions, I think we are good. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, going, gone. I think we've answered all the questions that we have for today. At this point, I would like to thank our speakers for joining us today. We do have a certificate of appreciation, just a small token to show our appreciation for you, Mel and Georg, for joining us today. So this certificate of appreciation goes out to Georg Steiger and Anna Melissa Nava in grateful acknowledgement and sincere appreciation for having served as guest speaker in the webinar entitled Xendit Business and Future. how to thrive in the digital world. Thank you so much, George and Anna, Mel,
Thank
rather,
you.
for joining us today. I am reading off my phone. Thank you also, Yang, for sharing all your insights and your new products with us. I think we are almost at the end of tonight's program. Again, a quick reminder to everyone here. So everyone in attendance here does get a free month, right, of direct debit transactions. All you have to do is go to xendit.co and sign up to get your 1 month free service. And with that, we are at the end of the program. Again, I'm Shania. Thank you again so much, Mel, Georg, and Yang, and everyone in attendance today. Thank you for all your questions. I hope we learned a little bit something as we go into the weekend. Again, I'm Shania. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.